At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Proctor if he's up on Proctor.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your goodness and mercy. We thank you that you are a God that hears us when we pray and you answers our prayer. Father, I pray tonight for our nation, that you would bring unity to our nation, that you would bring brotherly love to our nation. And we thank you that you hear us. We ask you to be with us tonight, that you give us wisdom and knowledge. Father, as we start with this task force and putting together a plan to open our schools, Father, give us the wisdom to do it safely, and to benefit our kids of Kershaw County. It's in your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Call the order of the Kershaw County School District for the 20 meeting for Tuesday, June the 9th. Is there a motion to adopt the proposal?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. McDonald and second by Mr. Blank. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let me know by raising your right hand. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda approving meeting minutes for May the 19th, 2024 meeting?
Second.
Properly motion and second by Mr. McDonald. All right. Dr. Cochran, thank you. Sorry about that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let me know by raising your left hand. Public forum, we do not have anyone sign up. Old business.
Can we, Mr. Chair, can we do acknowledgements, even though I don't think we have anybody here tonight, but I wanted to capture a couple things under the acknowledgements that wouldn't be under my report. At last count, I think it's very worthwhile knowing that our food service department has prepared and delivered 473,000 meals to the children of Kershaw County. And I just think that's amazing. The plan has changed for the summer for right now, where we're preparing all the meals, the breakfast and lunch, and delivering them, or actually we're not delivering as of right now. We're doing the pickups. And we delivered, or we prepared almost 17,000 meals for the first summer. So it tells you that people are taking advantage of the food service opportunity. So I wanted to share that publicly. The second thing, and acknowledgements I wanted to share publicly, really relate around the discussion that I had with County Councilman Sammy Tucker. And in light of recent incidents that have occurred all across our country, the one thing I will say, I'm very proud of Kershaw County and the way we have conducted and handled ourselves, but we know discussions need to take place. And so Mr. Tucker is working on putting together a group to meet. I have offered WTC, we have the public meeting set up out at WTC to host an event such as that, so that we can continue the discussion and make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to react and respond as a community. And when you look at Kershaw County, the Kershaw County School District, and a county that has a population of 65,000 people, we have nearly 11,000 students, and we have around 1,600 to 1,800 employees. We're a big part of that. And so I want to be a part of that discussion. I am quite certain you all want to be a part of that discussion, and I was very happy that you approached me and partnering in that event. I haven't heard, of course it's only Tuesday, I haven't heard from him yet this week, but there will be more to follow, and we continue to move forward. So I'm very happy to answer any questions or take any words back to Mr. Tucker on how you guys would like to do that.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman and Dr. Robbins, I would actually like us to use our voice of the board, maybe resolutions. I look across this board and the diversity that's in this board, and at times how we've fought and disagreed, but never in hate. Like it's always been what we thought was best for folks. But every decision we've made has been really in peace and harmony, what we thought was best. And I think a resolution from us as a board to use our voice to say that Kershaw County School District will not tolerate hate, not tolerate injustice, and that we work for all people to make lives better in this county. So That's my thought I'd like to say this time. Thank you.
I would be happy to research that, Mr. Chair, if you would like me to, on a resolution.
I mean, that's left up for the board. You know, that's something, I think if we're going to, you know, as we have worked together and the way the nation is at this current moment, I think we could even go a step further and look at our curriculum. And, you know, my question is, are we offering in the African American history? You know, because that may be something that we want to consider. I mean, because in order for a change to take place, we have to educate people on how we are all just different shades of color, but we have different backgrounds and different histories and different stories. Until we're able to recognize those stories, then, you know, I think that's taking more of an action along with a resolution. And I think that's something that could be, I would love to be explored.
I'd remind the board that this year we hired a person specifically responsible for diversity and inclusion in our school district. Now, her first year here has been more, you know, looking and learning type of scenarios, and she's conducted a few minor seminars with some of our minority employees and worked with our building principals. That's something that will pick up speed, and it's Miss Troy. You guys should remember Miss Karen Troy, who's in that role, and it's definitely something that we would want to vet through her, because she would have the easiest avenue to try to implement or help us implement a curriculum if that doesn't exist, and working with Dr. Taylor to get it out to our buildings. You know, we can talk about it at our level, but we got to push it out to the buildings and down to the student, you know, if we want to see change occur. So I will follow up with that. That's a very good point.
So then we will, under acknowledgement now, we're discussing two possibilities of a resolution, as well as you following up with Dr. Taylor about possibility of African American history and curriculum.
Would that be a motion, maybe a vote on, or just since it's just acknowledgement discussion?
It's an acknowledgement in the midst of discussing it. It's something that we want to take action on, the board can take action on to ensure that it moves in that direction.
It's a great idea, resolution, and also history. And I'm willing to vote on it. I don't know if we need to have more discussion, but I agree. We all have agreed, disagree on issues, but we've all had what the best for children for Shaw County. So
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second it.
I can't make the motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we as a board look at adopting a resolution and examining curriculum in Kershaw County School District to enhance for all people, and to look at maybe using our voice against hate, injustice, and any type of discrimination.
Yes, with a part of African American history.
Correct.
Okay, yes.
I'll second.
It's been properly motion and second. Further discussion.
I know I'm not a member of the board for discussion, but I would like to get clarification, because I think what we'll need to do academically is to look and see what options are available to us and bring back and present options to the board. So, but we'll work on that. Absolutely. Okay.
All those in favor, let me know by raising your right hand. And that's unanimous. Okay, any old business?
Yes. So last board meeting, as you recall, we mentioned the need to pass a continuing resolution for the 2020-21 budget based off the 2019-20 budget, in essence, because the South Carolina House of Representatives passed House Bill 3441 and a continuing resolution of their own state budget. Right now, it's looking like around late June is when the cutoff date is for the Senate to have their own version, but we're not expecting anything to be in place until mid to late September. So I put the budget numbers in there for you, just to remind you of what the 19-20 budget was. The continuing resolution is just a continuance of that. And I'll ask our CFO if he will take you through some of the details on what he's hearing from the state level.
What this continuing resolution does, it basically mirrors what the state has already done with the House and the Senate. They're keeping the budget statewide exactly as it was at the beginning of this fiscal year that we're back in right now. They will, the General Assembly will come back in September. In fact, the Board of Economic Advisors meets Thursday to give them a new forecast, for next year, and to look at what the damage is so far this year from the COVID-19 situation we find ourselves in. The numbers are going to be lower. If you recall, when at the beginning of this whole budget discussion year, they were looking at giving teachers, a minimum of a $3,000 increase, or you get your step increases. As it stands right now, nothing changes, nothing at all. There are no step increases for any employees, any classification of employees, and that is statewide. Everything is frozen. So when we flop over into the next fiscal year on July 1st, we'll just continue on exactly as we are right now. We will bring you, once we know what the state budget is going to look like, what the funding for schools is going to look like in September, sometime around the end of October, I'm guessing, we will bring you a proposed revision to the current budget, which is next year going to be just like it is right now. Start with that. I will also, this is not part of the continuing resolution, but just to remind everybody, we're kind of stumbling through, to get to the end of the year right now. And it's not totally clear exactly how we're going to end up. So I'm probably going to bring you an amended budget for the year we just finished. Whenever we know what the numbers are. This is a really, really strange time where it's hard to predict. So I'm not really even in a position to, I'm giving him, my best take on how we're going to end up. But we're in the middle right now of applying for the CARES Act money. And that's going to have an impact on how we finish our general fund budget year. Once we know how much of that's going to be approved, it'll all be approved. But we don't know which fiscal year is going to happen, whether it'll be this year or whether it'll be next year. So I'll be bringing an amended budget so that by the time, by the time the auditors get here, we will have an amended budget for the year we're about to finish. And the continuing resolution is before you now. It's just to be able to continue to operate exactly as we are. So we would ask for approval of the continuing resolution.
Don, when you say that they're keeping it exactly the same, I've heard that there was going to be some changes, for instance, reading coaches, that they were not going to pay for that. That was going to fall under our budget now. They're no longer funding that. Is there any truth to that, or will they continue? How's that? You're saying exactly the same, but will it be where there are changes already in place that we are going to have to absorb?
Again, the continuing resolution states that they will fund us just as we're being funded right now. When they get back here in September, all bets are off. I have no idea what they're going to do. And they don't know right now what they're going to do. So they get revised numbers from the Board of Economic Advisors with projections. They won't know how much money they have to deal with. That is an entirely true possibility that they will do that. Or they might fold it into something else, to some other fund, because they do that a lot of times. They'll take it out of the general fund to help balance it, and they'll burden another revenue stream, possibly sales tax, which would be your EIA funds. So then you got to shuffle things around within that fund in order to make it work for our district.
So just for the board's understanding, though, the CARES Act money is designed so that if that does happen, at least in the short term, while we're figuring out how we have to finance those positions, that's what we're looking at that CARES Act money for. We got over $2 million that's coming to us. And my first priority I shared with the board a few months ago was people, protecting people. And so Donnie is drafting the application to do just that, so that we wouldn't be Mickey Mousing around with that CARES Act money, and it would go right into funding all those positions.
It's an awful lot of money that we have already spent. this fiscal year to get us to the end of the year that is reimbursable. So what we're doing first is going after as much of the reimbursement as we can qualify for, to pull that back into this fiscal year, which allows us to relieve the general fund expenses and put it in reserves. When you put it in reserves, you have complete control of it. If you don't do that, you got to do what they say. But the more we can put into our reserve fund to finish out this year, the more flexibility the board and all of us have for getting through next year without having to do anything radically different. So that's our focus and our goal. Get as much reimbursement this fiscal year.
Other questions? So then it's recommended that we approve the continuing resolution for the funding until
When is our next funding?
We haven't had one scheduled since this started. I've been sending the information out to all of you, the regular reports. If you know the committee chair would like to have one, certainly we will. Or any members of the board are glad to do. We kind of really, if you want more detail or in-depth discussion, we can do that.
I'll answer that question next.
That's fine.
Let's deal with the resolution next before us, and then we'll come back with the finance meeting.
The only reason I ask that because I have some questions.
Okay,
and if we plan on having one, I'm gonna save my questions because they deal with that. And the questions I have, there's nothing we can do due to the resolution. That's the only reason I was asking. I don't want to burden us here with a pile of questions when we can do it in different.
Yes, we'll have that. So the resolution is before us, continuing resolution for funding for the year of 2021. Are there any more discussions?
I'll make a motion, we adopt administration's continuing resolution with regards to the budget.
Is there a second?
Right.
All those in favor, let me know by raise your right hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So we go back, that's part of the chairman's report. Part one item and another item. We're going to talk about having another board meeting this month on the 23rd. And the reason behind that is because Dr. Ross has went in more detail. We have to reopen the task force that's working, going to be working, so we want to be able to discuss and dissect all of that information that will be coming before us. And at that particular time, it will be a good time also to include our finance meeting in that, if the board is in agreement with that. But the board have to approve it.
What time on the 23rd?
6 o'clock. That's good with everyone. Can I get a motion?
Make the motion that we have a board meeting on June the 23rd at 6 p.m.
Finance. Second. It's been properly motion and second in the discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
In the nay, that's unanimous. Okay,
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first item I have on the agenda tonight is our request.
it's one thing, I did want to commend the administrators at all of the high schools, as well as all of the people in the office that, in the district office that have worked to make the graduations of Kershaw County such a success. That was an awesome job, and the students really deserve it.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Okay, I come to you annually and ask for your permission to authorize us to apply for federal funds so that we can continue programs in the school district. Tonight, I'm asking you to approve Title IV in particular. It's approximately $183,000 that we get from the federal government. And we use this money to fund our bullying program that we have in the school district. and all the associated costs that go along with it. So in a nutshell, that's what this is all about.
So, and to caveat that, so board policy guides this. And so federal funds for us include Title IV, but they also include, I think I sent this to you in your board cover sheet,
Title I, Title II, Title III,
and special.
Title IV, we have 4 funds, title funds that we get. IDA funds are federal funds also, but they're not part of the title program.
But they're a part of the federal application, so.
But the one for tonight is just Title IV.
No, it's all of them.
It's all of them.
It's all good.
Are we changing any way that we're distributing this money? For instance, I believe a lot of Title I has been focused on elementary. Are we spreading that out anymore and we're gonna take away from elementary and put that in
That's a
middle
Dr.
school?
Taylor question.
That's Dr. Taylor.
After 20 years, it's Dr. Taylor.
Okay.
Tim could probably answer.
Not good, but I want to answer for you. You're very capable.
So we have 2 middle schools that qualify to receive these funds this year. And so we're going to be including North Central Middle and Camden Middle. So they will receive a portion of those funds. That will not reduce the amount of funding the elementary schools receive either this year, because we got such a nice juicy allotment that our elementary schools will get about the same amount, and then our middle schools, those 2 middle schools, will also receive.
Could you explain to them how they qualify so they understand?
Sure. It's based on poverty. So poverty and number of students in the school, and they rank our schools based on that eligibility, with Bethune being the highest ranking school with the highest ranking poverty. Of course, they're first, and then the lowest ranking one I think is Waterby, and the others all ranked in between, and they receive descending amounts.
So since they added 2 schools, do they add to the amount of money we're getting, is what you're saying? They're adding to that?
The amount of money did increase for this year, and so yes, everybody gets pretty much what they had the year before, and then those other 2 schools get a reasonable amount too.
Okay, so what happens when we consolidate the 3 schools up there?
So they'll just reconfigure all of that eligibility, and that school will probably receive a larger amount because of increased population.
Okay,
And the poverty probably won't change much for that area.
okay,
Instead of funding 3 schools, you'll be funding 1.
yes, okay, good deal.
But more students.
I've got a question. It says operating programs. Special needs programs is part of this money?
Special needs are the IDEA funding. It's a totally separate pot of money that comes to us for special education children.
So they wouldn't see any of this as far as.
But they're included in program activities. They're not excluded from it at all.
Okay.
So typically Title I funding comes to us based on high poverty and struggling students. And it's intended to serve students from high poverty homes. But in some schools, you have students that come from high poverty homes, but also from middle class homes. But all students are served. None are denied, and special ed children are included. And then there's the separate funding for special ed as well.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then we are. Yes, with, Mr. Hopkins, have asked us for approval of title for the others. This is funding.
Second.
Probably was in second. I was in favor. Just trying to keep us alert. Okay, that's
All
right.
right.
Makes it nothing.
Thanks. Members of the board, I just want to publicly go over the reopening task force. This information is now available on our webpage. As we accrue information from the state, our subcommittees continue to work. We'll keep that populated so people have real-time data to see how we're operating and functioning. So the reopening task force I put together, you have the executive cabinet, which It consists of myself, Mr. Hopkins, Dr. Graham, Ms. Bird, and Mr. Smith, and as well as Mr. Wilson. And then we broke this down into subcommittees because there's a lot of work to do if we're going to get, back into a normal routine. And so we wanted to ensure that we had teacher voice, administrator voice, community voice, and parent voice. So each subcommittee consists of about 6 to 8, maybe 9 members. I believe Dr. Smith placed each of you on one of the subcommittees. I think it's important. This is such a big task in front of us for you guys to be included in that work. And the subcommittees were instruction and technology. We put those two together because in the e-learning world that we were in, they are one and the same. And they need to work together and not in silos as we plan for what's the possibility of another school closure. We have extracurricular and co-curricular activities, and the South Carolina High School League put out a memo, and we are all trying to respond on when we're going to allow student athletes back on campus, allow bands back on campus to work and practice and do those things. So they're working as a subcommittee. We have the related arts. What do related arts look like in our schools when we come back to school? That's a lot of movement of students. That's a lot of hands-on activities. So we've got a subcommittee for that. Our food service and transportation have been working all summer, all spring. And so they each have subcommittees on what that looks like for them as well. If we have to socially distance on a bus, how are we going to do it? So we just have to have courses of action from each of these subcommittees. We have operations and security. What are we going to do in terms of the hand sanitizers, the non-contact thermometers for people who are visiting our buildings? We've got a really good SOP in place right now that we think works, and it can work for our buildings. And, as the economy's open back up, you're starting to see that in a lot of the businesses that you go into. And then the final one is special education. We feel like that was a separate subcommittee in itself. And part of what we're looking at in special education is if we go into a closure again, how are we providing instructional minutes to those children? Because they lost quite a bit this spring, and we know they did. Are we going to send teachers out? Are we going to, how are we going to handle it? So it was a separate subcommittee. The first orientation meeting was last week. I think it went well. You've got binders if you weren't able to come. You can see what my opening address was to the participants. I'm excited. We've got a wealth of knowledge. We've got physicians. We've got parents. We've got people who are teachers and parents. We've got a really good cross-culture of individuals that are serving on this task force. If you go to the next slide, and you guys can go to the next slide in slide decks, you can see we had our first orientation meeting on the 1st. There's a report out from the subcommittees that is due to me by the 10th. And again, that's just to ensure that we're making progress. There will be a final preliminary recommendations report on June 24th. Now understand, these subcommittees are meeting on their own in between this. We're not controlling when they meet. They'll meet as frequently and often as they need to come up with a recommendation for me to present to the board. The goal is to have a plan, a reopening plan for the July 11th board meeting. It's important because we start school not too far after that. If we have to go back and revamp the plan, then that doesn't give us a lot of time to come back to, present to the board. One of the things that I will tell you is during this process, I decided to take the calendar committee and have it working in parallel with all of this. Because part of what the state is telling us is it's really open season on what you want to do with your school calendar, because they're just not sure of the path of the virus. We know that you're going to see it flatten, you're going to see it raise again, you'll see it flatten. And so they're really giving us a lot of control on what we want to do with the school calendar. In talking with, and I'm not trying to plant seeds in Mary Ann's head, but I've asked Mary Ann to bring just about 5 or 6 people back and really shrink this calendar committee to include me. But what I've heard in a lot of conversations, our fear is we're going to end up in some type of school closure again. And if we do, we want to front load the face-to-face instruction. Because there's not a person that's in education that's going to tell you that this length of e-learning is good for kids. And so the more infrequent and often of face-to-face instruction we can get, if we go into a school closure, then we've front-loaded the instructional days into the calendar. So those are some of the things we'll be looking at to bring to the board for consideration. And that's kind of where we are. We're in the very early stages. Like I said, you've got a list of people in your binders that show the people who have volunteered. I'm not opposed to a couple more people. We don't want these subcommittees too large because committee work, if you make them too large, they're not functional. And so right now I feel like we've got people who are invested, want to be a part of it. I sent personal invitations to every single person on your list, and I was very happy with the responses I got. I'd say 90% of the people said, yes, I want to participate. So but I'll stop there and just kind of open it up for any questions you may have of me. And then I've got several of the subcommittee chairs that are here tonight that can answer your questions too.
I just want my daughter's going to Wingate University, which is in North Carolina. But we just got an email from the president. We're starting on the current. They'll be home after Thanksgiving. That's their plan right now.
We're looking at similar things. That's why if we front load days and we start school earlier, then we're able to do that. The bad thing, and I know I've got two teachers sitting here, and when you do that, you use the breaks, but that means you're going to have a longer break, and that's simply what we have to do to respond to the virus. Where we'd like to do a balance where you're on a break and then back in. The problem is people travel. And so when you go on extended breaks, which is exactly what they're doing at the collegiate level, then you risk the chance of contact, in a variety of locations. I had a nice conversation with the commandant of Camden Military Academy today. Eric and I are pretty good friends. And they are not letting kids go on trips during the semester. And when they go home for Christmas, they go home. When they come back, they isolate them. And, of course, he can do this. It's a private academy. But if the parents aren't willing to do that, then he's telling them to find another school. Because he can't control it, because a lot of these kids come, and they travel to New York or wherever, all over, the country. And so that would really expose him.
Dr. Robinson, we have a question that we want to ask on the committee we're on as far as the
Special ed.
Should we ask this in another time, or should we ask this tonight? Or would it be appropriate? When are we going to meet with you to be able to ask some questions directly over someone?
Oh, it would, whenever, that's really up to your committee chair. So for you, it's Terry McGovern. I've kind of left the scheduling of that with them.
No, it wasn't anything huge. It was just,
I can try to answer it.
The iPads and the Chromebook. Some students with special needs like the iPad, and would it be, I think they're taken up, if I'm not mistaken, for the summer. They got kind of behind, and a special needs child sometimes really gets kind of like complacent, and they wondered if they could keep the iPads during the summer, or how's that, have they been taken up?
So, and I got Dr. Sanga and I've got Carrie here, and what my direction was to take them up so that we could inventory. And, some of them we probably need to do repairs, and we've had to repair, and then we reissue them. So I know that's an extra step, but because, we have millions of dollars invested in technology, we felt like it was the best way for accountability and control over the device. Pick it up, and then I won't say re-image because the Chromebooks aren't like a Windows device where you got to re-image a machine, but there is some things that they do to clean it up so it operates efficiently and then redistribute it.
Would they have an opportunity to use it over the summer?
Yes, sir. That's
Request.
Yeah.
That was kind of like where I was headed with that question.
Have you guys had any other conversations with Terry McGovern or anybody on that? Happy to let you weigh in.
Yeah, the process of getting those documents.
getting them back to the
We got
student.
the list of students now, we're going to identify with those students and then before Monday, because it starts on Monday.
Okay.
We're already in the process of doing that.
Thanks, Coach. And then the last topic I had tonight, you addressed the part of it next week, so we'll meet at 6 o'clock on June 23rd. We'll include the finance committee work as part of that meeting, and then I will provide you with an update, basically a reopening task force update. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, summer will disappear quick, so we really need to lock in a date for the summer advance, where we get together and, you know, tonight, we probably won't do it, obviously, tonight we'll do it the next board meeting. We need to put the check marks on the board to identify all the goals that you have, as a board, have achieved in the last 2 years, and so start to rethink goal setting for the next 3 years. So, Mr. Chair, how do you want to do that? You want to do, you want me to send out a variety of dates and you tell me when you're available? Do you, what are your thoughts? And I'm thinking the sooner the better, because if you let summer roll on too long, then people start to have vacations and other things. But I'm definitely open to do whatever you guys pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I think, didn't last year we do it, like just set up a survey, you could pick 2 or 3 dates and go from there. I thought it was a great way to do it.
What's that little program you can send out where you have 3 dates and you choose the ones you can attend? Is it Doodle or?
Yeah.
Doodle.
Doodle post.
Yeah, I'll send one of those out to you. Very good. When you go on vacation.
July the 11th.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss resignation and retirement of certified and classified personnel, employment of certified and classified personnel, and assignment changes and transfer of certified and classified personnel? I'm just having a second time. Let's have it. All those in favor, any discussion, hearing none, let it be known by saying, raise your right hand. All right.